The dining room smelled of sage and roasted turkey, the same way it had every November since I was small enough to need a booster seat. Plates were still being passed: mashed potatoes, green beans, almondine, the crescent rolls. Aunt Marie always insisted on making from the tube. Conversation moved in easy loops: Uncle Ted's new knee, Cousin Leela's promotion, the weather finally turning cold enough to justify the fireplace. Grandpa leaned back in his chair at the head of the table, the napkin tucked into his collar like always. He lifted his glass of sparkling cider toward me. "Glad you're enjoying the college fun we set up," he said. Warm, proud. The way he used to talk about the fishing cabin he built with his own hands. Made a real difference, didn't it? I paused with the gravy boat halfway to my plate. What fun? The room didn't explode, it just paused. A fork clinked once against porcelain and stayed there. Dad made a sound, half cough, half choke, set his wine glass down too fast. Liquid sloshed over the rim. Mom's face went the color of the tablecloth. Her hands disappeared into her lap. Across from me, little Sophie, 9, all elbows and curiosity, looked up from her phone under the table. Her eyes widened. She leaned toward her mother in stage, whispered loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Wait, you didn't know?" Grandpa blinked once, twice. The pride drained out of his expression like water through a sieve. He looked at Dad, then Mom, then back at me. "You didn't know?" I set the gravy boat down carefully. The small clunk was the loudest thing in the room. "No," I said, "I didn't." Silence stretched thin and brittle. Someone, maybe Aunt Marie, started to say something placating, then thought better of it. Dad cleared his throat. "We were going to tell you when the time was right." Mom nodded quickly, too quickly. "We thought it would be better if you didn't feel pressure or obligation." Grandpa rubbed the back of his neck. "We put it in when you were born. Small at first, then more after your grandma passed. Figured it'd help with school books, that apartment your junior year." I looked at him. "I worked 2 jobs my junior year, and the summer after, and most of senior year." The words came out flat, not angry, just accurate. Sophie's mother put a hand on her shoulder. Sophie looked between all the adults like she'd walked into the wrong room. I pushed my chair back an inch. Not dramatic, just enough to breathe. "I need some air." No one stopped me. The back porch was cold, sharp November cold that smelled faintly of wood smoke from next door. I sat on the top step, elbows on knees, staring at the grass that was already starting to frost at the edges. My breath came out in small clouds that disappeared fast. Inside, I could hear muffled voices rising and falling. Not yelling, not yet, just the sound of people trying to stitch something back together before it unraveled completely. After maybe 15 minutes, the screen door creaked. Grandpa stepped out, coatless, hands in his pockets. He didn't sit, just stood there, looking out at the same patch of yard. "I kept the statements," he said, "every year. Thought you'd ask someday. When you didn't, I figured your folks told you." I didn't answer right away. "They didn't." He nodded once, slow. "I see that now." Another long quiet. "I can show you the paperwork tomorrow," he said, "or tonight if you want. It's in the safe in my office." I looked up at him then. His face was older than I remembered it being at dinner, lines deeper around the eyes. "I believe you," I said. "That's not the part that hurts." He exhaled through his nose. "I know." We stayed like that until the cold started to settle into my bones. Then I stood. "I'm going to head out," I said. "I'll call you in a few days." He didn't argue, just nodded. Back inside, coats were still on hooks. Pie hadn't been cut yet. Mom started toward me. I raised a hand, small, enough to stop her without a word. Dad looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the shape of it. I said goodbye to Sophie. She hugged me quick and fierce, and to Uncle Ted, Aunt Marie, the cousins. Polite, brief. Then I left through the front door instead of the kitchen. The drive home was 2 hours of dark highway and radio static. I didn't bother tuning. My phone stayed face down on the passenger seat. It buzzed twice. Texts, probably, but I didn't check. The next morning at 9:17, I called Grandpa. He answered on the first ring. We met at his house at 11, just us. He opened the safe, pulled out a thin folder, statements going back 23 years, deposits, interest, a balance that would covered most of what I'd paid out of pocket and then some. I photographed each page with my phone, methodical, no comment. When I finished, he asked, "What now?" I closed the folder, handed it back. "I'm going to open my own account," I said. "Transfer it there. Clean title, no one else on it." He nodded. "That's fair." No apology came, not because he didn't feel it, he did, but because the moment for easy sorry had passed years ago. I left with the photos and a handshake that lasted a second longer than usual. 2 weeks later, the transfer cleared. I changed the password, added two-factor, named the account simply mine. Thanksgiving the next year, I spent in a rented cabin 3 hours north. Wood stove, lake view. A friend from grad school came up with his dog and a bottle of bourbon. We didn't finish. We talked about work, about books, about nothing important. No one asked why I wasn't with family. I didn't volunteer it. The pie I made, pumpkin, from scratch, tasted better than any I'd ever had at the big table. Sometimes the phone still rings on holidays. I let it go to voicemail. The messages are shorter now, careful. They don't demand answers anymore. I listen to them later when the house is quiet. Then I delete them without replying. The balance in the account grows slowly. I don't touch it often. It sits there like a closed book I already read. I know the ending. I just don't need to keep rereading it.